So most of you know me from my mobile news or my UBC hat. CrowdTrust Technologies has existed for just about a year now as a kind of skunkworks project out of a number of things that I've been doing. But if you listen carefully and think about the connections that have been made through this series, you'll see where I'm coming from and why I think this is a useful technology, not necessarily from exactly where it is now, but integrating between the things that we're talking about today. The idea of make it all meaningful is the notion that all of us have a gazillion things going on in our lives. No, let's skip this, we can come back to it. It's becoming increasingly more chaotic to figure out what's going on. You've got emails, blogs, documents, images, and they're all over the place. They're confusing, and it's very hard for us to make sense of all of those things. And to a certain extent, we can figure that they are somewhere safe, but the sense of the idea of making sense of them in a broader way, that is actually figuring out why they're important to us and how we can capture what's important to us is somewhat elusive. All the documents I have right now, I can look around for. I can do a Google desktop search and find things fairly quickly. It's not about finding. It's about capturing the semantic value of those things, what the meaning are, and pulling the meaning together and making them more broadly accessible, not only to me, but for the people that know me. And so the simple analogy that I'm going to make is right now we have a place where we know where to put things that we don't want. It's right there on our desktop, and it's very easy. We don't want it to just drop it in the trash. Actually, when I was looking for the symbol, I realized that it's now a recycle box, not a trash box anymore.
Oh, and a
What does
Vista?
recycle mean when you have digital data? It's an inappropriate use of the terminology.
Get the bits back.
Sure the ones. Yeah. But that notion that there's a very clear place where you put the things you don't want is around us. What we don't have is the opposite of that, which is where do you put the things that really, really matter to you? How many times a day does something come by and say, gee, I don't want to forget that thought, or that's a really cool picture, somehow or another I want it around, or that website is very, very cool. Now I can bookmark some of those things and I can connect some of those things, but the notion that I can have something a little bit deeper, what we're calling a personal creative commons, where we can actually simply
personal
drop
creative
everything in.
commons.
As simple as dropping something into the trash, but the opposite of that. This is important, I don't want to lose it, and then you ask the question, why is it important? And then you have to get into how is it going to be valuable to you in the long run. So that notion of I think of it sometimes, my original background is astrophysics, so the black hole is the kind of trash bin. This would be the blue hole being associated with knowledge. Where do I drop everything that really matters to me into this blue hole? And so I'm going to give you a case in point. How I used this tool over the last 3 or 4 months was for mobile news. Every time I got anything that was important for this next phase of mobile news, I captured them. I just threw it into this space. Threw it in with a couple of tags. So straight from Gmail. Any idea I had, this was from the Participatory Sensing Summit. I had a really cool set of ideas related to that. Obviously, the mobile news site itself, books that I'm reading, images that I'm creating, anything that really matters, I start collecting. And I just throw it into the same space, it doesn't matter where it is. And in the end, what happens once you tag those is that you can put those things in a place and they actually create their own meaning amongst each other. Because of the tags you're putting on your own folksonomy, the tags then with your folksonomy, which means the words have meaning related to you, the meanings related to you will start adding up, and they'll start making those connections, and you can actually start pulling out connections you never even imagined existed because of the connections that are there. It's kind of the metaphor of pennies in a piggy bank. The banking metaphor works very well. Each little piece of thing that matters to you, if you can tag why it matters to you, put it in, gradually it will grow like an investment portfolio. Rather than putting your money under your pillow, which is really what you're doing now with the computer, and you can find it using, desktop search or something. What you're doing now is putting in an investment portfolio where it can actually self-invest, but much more importantly, group invest. And so what we're doing with this tagging process is you can create a tag cloud. Now, I don't know how many of you are using Delicious or Magnolia or anything like that now. You tag things, it's there. This is actually a segment of my personal but public tag cloud. And you can see, because I've done it for a while, Mobile Muse sticks out because I've been dumping a lot of things with respect to Mobile Muse in there. I'm not going to go online now and show you how I can drill in and find anything with that. That matter is actually a very simple thing to do. But that allusion up top to DNA, I think, is a really crucial one. It would be a great debate here, and we probably don't have time for it, but I'm suggesting that this thing here, it actually has more nuanced density of stuff related to who I am than my DNA does in the long run. Meaning, my tag cloud is completely different from yours, but just from the starting point. I can go through all the people that are using CrowdTrust at the moment. Their tag clouds are absolutely different from the things that they're doing. But beyond that, that information represents me so well, it can do things for me when I'm not around. So if you take the biotechnology metaphor a few steps further, this can now act as a protein, and it can go out there and bind with information, people, other things that I want to, and actually serve me in that kind of function when I'm not even attending to it. It has enough information about me as I'm building that, and nuanced information such as what's recent, what's corporate, what's personal, and all of those type of things that I can look after in that kind of way and apply it in that kind of way. The other piece that we make it very easy to do is that we can control views, who can see what and why. So in many cases, there are lots of parts of me that I want to keep totally private. And so I just tag it that way, and I'm the only one that can ever see it. Other things are totally public, and those are things that tag I really could care less if anybody sees, or sometimes are things that I really want people to see about me. Can't really think of anything what that is, but I'm sure that is there. And then there are lots of other pieces, all kinds of groups you do. You can tag for different things, I guess is what I'm saying. So in terms of media tagging, in this case, sometimes I tag for myself. This is purely self-interest or purely stuff that I really don't want out there, things I'm collecting on my own. I'm not ready for prime time, I'm collecting those. Sometimes it's straight strategically into the work group that I'm doing. So I want to share with the whole set of people that are working on a particular project. If I think it's important for that project, then it's probably important for them too, so I'm opening up to them, but nobody else can see it. Likewise, I can make things that are totally public in that domain. Obviously, what happens then is as soon as you're connected to those groups can start working for you, because again, you're binding to the other information in those groups. And so pieces that come to you actually come up like email. That notion of about that tag cloud basically being like an opportunity filter for you. It filters things through and captures things that are of interest to you and presents them as a list to you, and you can either consume those or get rid of them. You can add them to your cloud or not. But also there are team repositories and so on that make that work. So you might be saying, okay, how does CrowdTrust make money? This is a corporate discussion more than anything else. So basically, all of CrowdTrust accounts are absolutely free, like a Facebook or MySpace. All of your storage is absolutely free. The software is actually completely open source, so that's not going to make us money. What we're making money on is the fact that if you scale it up, any human organization is the same as an individual, in that they are kind of wandering blind in a very fast-changing world. And one of the things I learned from my days at Numit when I was chief research officer, working with Sony and EA and so on, when you get to the top of an organization that seems to be on top of the world, the people that are actually totally in charge are more scared than any individual is about what the future is. They have absolutely no idea about what they're doing, and they're making decisions in the dark. And sometimes they're very smart people, and usually they're got there because they're very good at making decisions in the dark, but they're totally scared. When you get down to somebody who's in charge of, say, the technology horizon for a huge corporation, whether it be in North America or anywhere in the world, they've got their own intelligence sources coming in, but it's basically a Ouija board they're using, their own personal Ouija board to try to figure out where they should go in the future. And so this notion of change and complexity only increasing, how does an organization make sense of its world? There's so many different directions you can go. All you have to do is imagine a single person related to your organization, whether it be an employee or a customer or a constituent, who is not doing anything for you. They're only doing things for themselves. And what they're doing is they're capturing things that are zipping by in their lives that are important to them, just massing things that matter to them, and occasionally saying, you know what, this is private, but this is public and I don't care, or this is for a work group, and they're just doing those things, but they're storing those around them. And clearly, if they're one of those people, a customer or an employee or a constituent, there's going to be an intersection. And if there's an intersection with one person, there's going to be a large intersection with a large number of people. And gradually, if you actually let those people interact, that is, share, and do things accurately, you can actually start focusing so that the intelligence of your whole crowd in terms of what matters, what futures are, and so on will start intersecting. It's a collective intelligence or wisdom of crowd's opportunity. It may not be perfect, but it is an awful lot better than diving in the dark. Is it the only thing you want your corporation and your organization to act on? Absolutely not. But it is a source of intelligence that we don't capture very well right now. Just a couple of slides more, and then you can ask your questions. I think this is pretty well the last one. Yeah. So how we make our money is we obviously have the general site, which is totally free, but if you want to embed CrowdTrust into your own corporate site, or if you want completely private, secure hosting, or if you want that branded access, or custom kind of solutions for that, or much more importantly, which is the renewable revenue side, the focused analytics, the trends that are happening within your groups, your customers, your constituents. That's where we make our renewable revenue on an ongoing basis. Now, just as closing, I have a couple of minutes for questions, I think, if I'm not too long. One of the things I'm very interested in actually, anticipates Sid's talk in a couple of minutes, and that is, what happens when I can capture those things that are flying by me all the time, all day long, and it doesn't matter where I am or what I'm in. So I don't actually want anybody ever to open their CrowdTrust account in the normal passage of things. If you're in email, just click it, it's gone. It's into CrowdTrust. If you're in the web, just click it, it's gone. All those kind of applets are available. But I also want it to be completely, mobile as well. And that notion of tagging things that are significant to me as I'm moving through life in three-dimensional space, as well as time space, as well as emotional space and others is an incredibly important thing to do if you're going to make it all meaningful. And the simplest kind of example I can give you is that the theme for the Muse 3 program, which is just started, is community-generated media. By the way, I can prove CrowdTrust works because we haven't formally announced it to the world yet, but Muse 3 has been approved by all of the parties, and so we're going ahead now with another $5 million of R&D money for mobile applications. But the point being there that the theme of Mobile Muse is about community-generated media. And what better way of community-generated media? All of us are tagging the things that are important to us as we're moving through a space, and you can collect it up. Monumental problem an organization like NavTech has is, collecting all that information about street signs and where the potholes are, and what changes are happening, and all the rest of that. It is impossible for them to make money if they do it top down. They can never collect the data that's going to make that work for them. The only way they can make that work is that they turn it bottom up and have it as a community-generated media perspective, and people are essentially tagging things throughout their own experience that matter to them and create a collective map of things. One of the projects we're working at very actively with Bell and a couple of others is called an inclusivity map of the city, which is simply that if I'm in a wheelchair, or if I'm blind, or if I'm deaf, or if I speak Swahili, or if whatever makes me different in the world, how do I navigate the city that I'm in? Again, you could dump a bucket of money on any group to collect all the data for things that help make that happen. But it's never going to happen from top down. You have to spread it amongst the whole environment. It's a social activity to make that work. Anyway, that's what CrowdTrust is about. A couple of questions about it. Do I have some time for questions?
Yeah, of course. No problem.
Good.
Yeah, first of all, it's a very interesting. And actually, became very curious about the last topic that you mentioned there, the post analytics. Could you just expand at least high level, an example of what?
Absolutely. When you look at, say, my tag cloud as an example, there's an awful lot of information there. It's actually not the best way of presenting that information. And so there are tools that we've developed that actually look behind that information for trends over time, over subject. It's basically a semantic set of reporting engines that dive into the broader sets of just me, the groups I'm in, to allow me to capture trends that are important. That's not necessarily a tool that we'll put down to the individual, although I think there will be individual tools that we can use. But it is something that we definitely can sell to corporations that really have to understand. I'll give you an example where one of the applications of CrowdTrust right now will be for the GVRD in everything to do with energy policy in the city. They want to make the city, energy sufficient. So is it smart streetlights, or is it, who knows what? They're going to put all of those out, and they're going to let people, the crowd, basically respond to that in an open way. So this is a wonderful public engagement tool. We can actually drill deeper than the tag clouds can do to show what the real trends are behind the scenes. Yes.
Thanks. I just finding this type of thing as it relates to CrowdTrust, but also as a concept, with smaller amounts of information, it gets very recursive, I find. That you have sort of one blog post or one piece of information, and it gets referred to and referred to and referred to, and you end up getting 4 or 5 references to the exact same piece of information.
Yeah.
Are you looked into at all kind of what the amount of information needs to be to sort of escape that recursive loop, or escape the gravity of that?
Yep, and one of the pieces that really hits me on this one is having used Facebook and MySpace and other types of things. If you want, that's a trivial semantic representation of who I am. My tag cloud becomes the first time I've actually been able to look at my mind as it's moving on in a evolving sense. So it's a semantic mirror. I've never had a semantic mirror, nor a semantic portrait that I can put out. Now I can change that semantic portrait for the different groups I'm involved with, but I can also change it for kinds of applications. So what I'm saying in answer to your question is that what isn't important, what is recursive through a group, won't happen as much in a system like this, because you're capturing the things that matter to you. And you and I may share an awful lot of things, but the only things that will pop up are those things that resonate for, amongst, I don't know, 10% of us in this group now. But then they'll die away very, very quickly if they aren't pumped, and you have to pump them in some way. So I'm not actually worried about that part.
But there has to be a critical mass before it becomes useful, I would imagine.
Yes, for yourself or for anybody else, you can, you have to be tagging for at least a couple of months before you start seeing structure and before you can start getting some use out of it. But I'm a learning technologist by love, and I'm imagining, kids 10 years from now being able to do this as part of their schoolwork. I mean, I've got 2 sons in first-year university. I see them sitting on the couch with their textbooks, highlighting lines and turning page, highlighting lines, not being able to just say click, 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 put that in, and then turning that around to have that come back as a structured kind of learning, exercise for them. Also, just from a semantic point of view, when I, digitally highlight something, if I'm forced to put 2 or 3 words around what that means to me, all of a sudden I've cemented it in my head an awful lot better than just highlighting it and turning the page. So again, nothing proven here, but it's, I believe it's there. Roland.
So is it, does it work on Mac and Linux since it's going to work on mobiles as well?
Yes. Yeah, it's a completely web-based application at the moment.
And I can reuse the tags from Flickr and other places?
Yeah, you can import, export from anywhere else, and it is open source, and anybody who wants an account can have one now. Just email me and I'll send it out, and then you can offer anybody else in the world accounts as well.
Great.
Yes?
Based on your research, how often do the users go back to read things they tagged? In other words, is it a basket who step into it and never take it out?
Excellent question. Originally, the people that built the background, original software were looking at it from a hunter perspective, where you're constantly searching for things. And so it is about constantly going into it. And I'm trying to reframe the whole business model to a gatherer perspective. I'm constantly gathering, throwing it in, and actually rarely go there. In fact, if I use my black hole metaphor too much, black holes aren't actually completely locked. They evaporate over time. And so I actually think of this blue hole as something which should evaporate things out to me. I mean, I never have to go in. It'll just tell me when something is important happening, and then it'll come up to me. I think that's a better model for that. I actually never want to go there. But very good question.
Some questions about privacy. So because it seems like a different technique. Some information some people don't want to share with them. So, I mean,
that's one of our best value propositions is, whenever you use Google, Google is capturing everything you do in the background. When you use something like this, you can say you own every tag, you own every piece that you put in. If you decide you don't like us and you say clear my account, every single tendril of your experience is completely gone forever. It just sucks it out, and you can put it somewhere else. So you can decide that. The only things that we will be data mining on for those higher level things are the things that you decide to make public in some way. So that's an absolute in terms of our privacy policy.
Yeah, question, like tagging like images or like small pieces of media, this has been shown like a good concept. But how it is if you have, for instance, like a web page which is like really long, or for instance, platforms like YouTube where we have like a specific video which takes maybe like 10 minutes, but there's only like a 5-second spot in the middle of the video. Is it possible with your platform to tag just that specific information piece and not the entire thing?
I'm going to leave that to you. Yes.
Okay.
No. At this point, no, we can't do that. But clearly the world is going in that way.
Yeah.
So
time code tagging,
point,
for sure.
When you tag an image or a video, we're not providing the content management system behind that to throw it in. I'm just going to take your Flickr link or your YouTube link or whatever else, and that's part of that. And so at this point, we're really just storing the links, not the objects. So the linkability of that line in the textbook, not the whole book, just that line in the textbook, or that image in the video, or just that part of the image, isn't there yet. But there are much smarter people than I am working on that. I think that will come. At this point, it's going to be fairly rough.
But companies who are interested in such a technology, they could come to you and say, well, we offer these kind of tools, could we incorporate in your platform?
Exactly. Or they can simply take our open source software and compete directly. That's fine for them as well. Yeah. Are you up next? You want me to get off the stage?
The next guy.
Actually, I'm wondering about scalability. So, as you keep dumping in, it's starting to grow this representation.
Yeah.
What if I want to change that? What if I go, you know what, it's going the wrong way, or it's not really representative, and now I need to go and tune it somehow.
Yep.
You mean like retagging or like?
Retagging.
Yeah.
Or
And so, for instance, we've already got the capability in now where you can lasso a group of tags and rename them with one tag. So just change the whole or erase those in the background if you want to do that.
but the towns there, if you grouped into one tag, you're changing the weighting. So it gets kind of complicated.
It is. You'll have to talk to Lee Iverson about that one. But yes, it does create complications. I think one of the more interesting parts of this is the evolution. What we've found in our experience is nobody ever wants to see the representation of their entire tag cloud. The representation most people want to see is the last roughly 2 weeks. And that, in other words, that's their current consciousness. And they want access to
The current event horizon.
They don't want to lose that. They want their whole history to reflect forward in some way. But the usefulness of them is something that's very current.
Maybe the decay rate or something.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, I have one last question. Sorry, I'm really curious about the focused analytics. I love librarians, and is there a sort of a corporate librarian, I don't know how you would say this, council, because a lot of industries have established taxonomies, which it would be nice to have the corporate librarian, whatever she's called, or he. Is that part of that?
Yes, it is. In fact, our very first application of this technology, which was a year ago for the World Urban Forum, we created a site called GUSI, the Global Urban Sustainability Solutions Exchange, which was based on, great title, which was based on the notion that every city in the world is identical in terms of its problems of clean air, clean streets, clean water, clean energy, all the rest of those things, but they don't have any way of sharing knowledge. So what we built in GUSI was this whole background where people, city builders, engineers, architects, and so on, could tag the things that were important to them, but you could layer on top of that a formal taxonomy so that they could either tag from their folk side, their personal side, or from a formal structured side, and you actually, as a librarian, mix those together.
Because that's where you make, the synthesis is what the librarian will do, which will bring together, yeah, the various streams.
The really exciting part of it is, you know, on a folksonomy side, sorry, just get me on the stage anytime.
We have another 4 minutes.
Gong.
Folksonomy is incredibly important.
Yeah.
If you're not using your own language, it's a waste of time. And it's very similar to the fact why KM systems, knowledge management systems, failed right across the board. It's because it's a formal top-down system and people were said, you know, put stuff in here and don't worry, we'll look after it for you. And you know, there was no value to the individual out of that. There was no meaning to the individual. So this is like a KM system at the personal level where I'm just making meaning for myself and amplifying that meaning over a long period of time and actually evolving that meaning over time. And the notion that I can actually, you know, do that and make sense of it for myself is really important. But how do I make sense of somebody else's vocabulary? And that notion that I may have 600 words I use, way more than that, and Jim here may have 600. And how do I actually link between the things Jim's interested in and I'm interested in? Because I know there's an intersection, but we're not using the same words. There's very simple ways of doing that based on, well, if we both tag the same set of things and we've used these sets of words, we can start doing some very simple associations behind the scenes between Jim's vocabulary, his folksonomy, and mine, and make those linkages. And actually, it doesn't matter if Jim speaks English or not. We
Exactly.
should be able to make that
Yep.
happen very, very simply. And so that broad sense of we've now crossed a language barrier at the same time using tools in the background, I think is very important.
Okay.